Welcome. Thanks for joining me on The Real Story today. This is Steve McClurg. He is a state senator from Central Illinois, and this is him just 2 days ago on the Senate floor during a debate about the appointment of the new, well, she's actually been in the administration for a while, but an appointment of Dulce Quintero for Department of Human Services, a $14 billion organization. Here's what Steve McClurg had to say.
About a year and a half ago, we discovered that DHS was intentionally mailing everyone who was a non-citizen who was applying for benefits pre-filled out voter registration forms to go directly to their local county clerk. And I think, as all of us know, the county clerk can no longer verify citizenship. And this is something that I've talked to DHS about behind the scenes now for over a year and a half. I recently had a discussion with the secretary before the confirmation hearing in the Executive Appointments Committee, and I was assured that the secretary would look into this. This is very concerning, and the only response that I got at the hearing was that, yes, I can confirm that that is taking place. So we have a DHS that is mailing people who are not eligible to vote pre-filled out voter registration forms. So they are registering to vote, I can only assume. And that's bad for two reasons. It's bad for the immigrant because that is a cardinal sin. If you're applying to be a permanent resident or a citizen, you will never be a citizen, you will never be a permanent resident legally if you cast a vote as if you are already an American citizen. So that's bad for the immigrant, and it's also, of course, bad for the security of our elections. The fact that the secretary insisted, I'm going to look into this, we're going to do... And then all we got was confirmation, which I already got a year and a half ago, that this is still going on. I was also told there'd be follow-ups after this, and this is going to be taken care of. This is a real problem. I mean, this is like really bad. So I think at the very least we should vote no, but there's some real issues here. And while the secretary is a very nice person, that agency is being run terribly right now. And the outstanding issues and legal issues are very concerning. So for those reasons, I do urge a no vote.
And, of course, that passed on a partisan line. Democrats voting for it, Republicans voting against. Well, here to discuss that and much more about what's going on in Springfield is State Senator Terri Bryant. She's from the 58th Senate District, and she joins us now. She weighed in on that debate on the floor. Terri, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me today, Jeannie. It's that issue, I can elaborate on it, and then there are others, but very concerning that she was called for confirmation and that she was ultimately confirmed.
Yes, I also watched part of the hearing in which she could not answer any of the pertinent questions and then promised follow-up to both the Republicans and Democrats. And according to State Senator Jason Plummer and others, she never provided any follow-up to their numerous questions they had about how she was going to control that agency. It's a $14 billion agency.
Yeah, and her salary is, I believe it's $212,000.
Well, I mean,
per year.
Okay, so is this still true? Are we still slipping in pre-filled out forms for voter registration into packets for illegals that come into contact with DHS?
Yeah, we have gotten no information that any of this has changed. So what happens is an individual will get a kind of a full packet, multiple pages, multiple issues. In the middle of that, not only is the form filled out, but there is an addressed envelope that goes to the county clerk that is applicable for that individual. So what should happen is everything's returned to DHS. DHS confirms that the person is, in fact, a citizen. Then they mail that to the State Board of Elections, who also confirms that they are a citizen. And then the State Board of Elections should be mailing that to the county, because the county is prohibited from checking on citizenship. So we have a 2-point
Hey,
check.
Can I pause you right there? Because I remember when I was in the state legislature, you were in the House with me, and this bill was passed, I believe, in 2016, where the Democrats wanted additional points of contact to register a voter, and one of them was Department of Human Services. And the reason this seemed to be I mean, I'm not okay with it. I think you should want to go and register to vote, and you should make that affirmative case to do it. But I understand. Okay. But the thing that made it somewhat okay is that it had to go to the Secretary of State, and it had to be confirmed for citizenship. And so at least this was a way to weed out any bad registrations.
Yeah, so it's a double verification, but
Right.
that is being totally skipped over, not to mention the fact that when the individual who may not be super fluent in English mails that in, they have now made themselves a felon and also made it impossible for them to ever be a citizen, and it's automatic deportation. So they're being set up in that way if they're caught.
Well, I want to question the fact that Dulce Quintero is even, qualified for this position. I was looking at her resume, and of course, the third thing that came up when I Googled her name was this Chicago's LGBT Hall of Fame. And of course, she's in that Hall of Fame, and she's got a bachelor's degree from the University of California, Davis, and she's committed to harm reduction practice, innovative organizational development, and trauma-informed work. And that's all her qualifications. She's essentially a community activist prior to getting this position. It appears, at least in this particular biography. And I just, I don't know. There's a lot of problems with developmentally disabled people not getting the services that they need. You've got a lot of behavioral and mental health problems. You've got rehabilitation problems. I just think I think it's a huge, huge department, and it doesn't seem for her to be qualified.
Yeah, and even the problems we've had, like at DCFS, and Department of Corrections, those agencies are not as large as the full DHS, and it is not being run in an efficient manner, nor is it being run in a way that helps the people they're supposed to help. So there's a lot of taxpayer dollars being wasted, unaccounted for. And in the particular case that Steve McClure mentioned, I hope we're going to be able to get the DOJ here to take a look at what is happening there. I'm trying to get them here to look at DOC, but they need to be looking at DHS as well.
So they have oversight, if I'm not wrong, don't they have oversight on food stamps and Medicaid eligibility?
Yes, they do.
Okay, and well, we know that our food stamp rolls are, lots of fraud there. We're expecting a $700 million penalty because we're past the threshold for the federal government, where they say now you get penalized because you have so many bad people on the rolls. I mean, I'm not talking about bad people. I'm talking about people who shouldn't be on the rolls that are on the rolls, and
Sure.
She can't seem to solve this problem either.
I don't think she's trying to solve the problem. In my opinion, she's trying to get more people added on. And when we start skirting the safeguards that the legislature has put up, then of course we're going to have problems. And I think Senator Plummer said, if we're just going to confirm people who are unqualified, no matter what happens at the committee level, then why do we even have the committee? The committees at all? Let's just do away from those. That was tongue in cheek. He didn't really mean that we shouldn't have them, but it was, a little satirical. And the point is, we're supposed to flush all of this out in committee. And when that doesn't flush out the way the Democrats want, they just go around it. They circumvent it.
Yeah, well, I have a lot that I could talk to you about, so I'm going to move on. But I think that I think what you heard from McClurg and from you, if anybody else listened to the Senate debate on that, I mean, it's pretty obvious that they are just passing people into big positions without any true vetting, and that's really problemsome. Okay, something that's on a lot of people's mind, and we get asked a lot about it up here. I don't know about in your area. You're down in far southern Illinois, but it does affect everybody. And this build plan. This is that plan where they're going to take all the zoning that you typically have at the local level, and they're going to move it up to the state level, so that, guess what, those granny flats and those four squares, those four can go right in the middle of a neighborhood when somebody sells a property.
We're hearing a lot about it as well, Jeannie, because but some of it is in the opposite direction, because there's a lot of misinformation, I think, being passed out there by the realtors. So the realtors, who are good folks, they're your next door neighbors, their association is telling them this is really going to be good for their industry, blah, blah, blah. And if they really had the opportunity to dig deeply into this, it's not good for their industry. And I'm really glad that the Illinois Municipal League has come out with a different plan, and that now people are beginning to see anytime you take local control away, it's not good for the average citizen. So I'm hopeful that the realtors will begin to wake up and see that this is not good for their industry or any of the people that they would sell properties to.
Do you think that the plan passes in the end, or some version of it?
Well, I'm sure some version of it, because at this point it seems like anything that J.B. Pritzker wants, his legislative allies pass for him, even like we were talking about with Secretary Contreras. It's clear that, that some of these things are really not good for anyone, and we'll still see some version of it. So I don't know. Some of the Democrats I'm hearing, quietly in receptions after the day when we're in Springfield, that they're getting sick of getting pushed around by J.B. Pritzker, and that often things are thrown at them where no one's even talked to them. When they look a little bit deeper, they realize it's very bad. They don't want to be put in that position. So if they believe that they're going to be put in a bad position, especially now that there is an alternative plan out there, or sunlight on build being so bad, then possibly they'll keep that from being called, just so there's no embarrassment.
All right, moving on, because this bill is in the Senate right now, and that's that megaproject Bears deal. Can you give us any update on that? From what I could tell, did anything happen in the Senate on this? I mean, we're running out of time towards the end of May here.
So far, I'm not getting a lot of information on it, primarily because everything is top secret, kind of like when they did the remapping, where you had to have the secret knock to even get in the door. This is top secret, but if anyone reads Cap Facts or some of the other media outlets, you'll see that there was a top secret memo, we'll call it a top secret memo, that was disseminated, and it looks very much like there were conversations, or are conversations, going on between the House and Senate Dems and the governor's office. So they're looking at it, even though they continue to say that the Senate is not having conversations. I'm using broad strokes with all of this, but it does look like there are secret conversations going on. As of today, I don't believe that there's anything that can come that's good for the taxpayers. There were some Republicans that voted for a bill in the House that was not complete, and I think there were some projects that were in the legislation that came over from the House, specifically designed to drag those Republicans in. It's tough to vote no when your district is going to get something out of it, but we know that bill was not real, it's not going anywhere. I don't know what the final bill will look like, but so far I don't think it's good for Illinoisans.
Well, that is interesting, because the CTU is out with op-eds, also saying that they don't like the bill because they think it steals education dollars from there. Now, I don't know that that's true, quite frankly.